If I could read any book again for the first time, it would be this one. This book is an actual work of art. I could not put this book down. Literally, I read it in 2 days. Hello, cozy friends, and welcome back to my cozy corner. If you are new here, hi, I am Morgan, and I love to unravel my anxious mind with cozy hobbies, mostly knitting and reading. If that's your vibe, I'd love it if you tap subscribe to stick around for more cozy videos. In this video, we are going to be chatting about 13 books that I will be rereading until the end of time. Most of the books on this list are my go-to book recommendations if anyone asks or just will listen to me ramble about my favorite books. All of these books really formed my reading journey in some way, or I just really saw myself in the characters. This video will probably also serve as a get to know me in books tag because it's probably going to expose a lot about my reading tastes. Let me know in the comments down below what are some of your favorite things in books. Tell me your comfort reads and let me know if we have any in common. So let's unravel the 13 books I will be rereading until the end of time. Book number 1 is Heir of Fire by Sarah J. Maas. I am currently rereading this book series on audiobook, and that really inspired me to create this video because I found myself leaning into rereading comfort books. Now that I'm in a whole new place in the world, I think it was really comforting to dive back into my comfort books and revisit those worlds. This is the third book in the Throne of Glass series. In Throne of Glass, the main character, Selena, is an 18-year-old assassin who has been enslaved in the salt mines with a life sentence for killing hundreds of people. She is offered a deal by the Crown Prince to participate in a competition to be the king's champion, and she would basically serve the king in order to get out of her life sentence serving in the salt mines. In the salt mines, most people don't survive, so the fact that she has even survived as long as she has is honestly a testament to how strong she is. But this third book is my favorite of the series, and in it she is coming to terms with her new identity, her newfound identity, and her new powers. The magic system in this book just absolutely explodes. Everything really picks up in this book. I see a lot of reviews saying that this book was so slow for them compared to the first and second book, and that's fair, but everything is transforming in this book. There are new characters being introduced. There's a whole magic system being introduced, and Selena is grieving in this book. She's grieving those she has lost. She's grieving her lost identity and entering a new one. And it's just such a powerful book, and it really transforms the series into what it becomes in the later books. So the series is obviously a huge commitment. Each book is like 700 plus pages, and it's like 7 books long, but it's so worth it. If you're looking for a good fantasy book series, I highly recommend this one. A lot of people really prefer her A Court of Thorns and Roses series by the same author, and I really feel like people kind of pick a side. You either love A Court of Thorns and Roses or you love Throne of Glass. Only very few people love both, I think. If you are an anomaly, please let me know below. Do you like both of the series? Book number 2 on my series is Matilda by Roald Dahl. I think I first discovered this story and this fictional character actually from the movie, but I also read it. I don't know which one came first. I think this was the first time I ever really saw myself in a fictional character. It immediately became a comfort book of mine. As a child, I definitely saw myself in Matilda and her love of books and coming into her power. Matilda is a very brilliant child who has a love of books and negligent parents and a bully for a principal, but she also discovers her special telekinetic powers that allow her to kind of take back the power from these mean adults. But as a kid, this book really gave me hope that I too could overcome my circumstances, and I too could take back and come into my own power and have a happy ending and a loving family in the end as well. I have always cherished and loved Matilda, and when Harry Styles, one of my favorite artists in the world, I've been a One Direction fan since 2010, when he wrote a song named Matilda inspired by this book, like, I literally started crying on the first line. I could not believe like he wrote that song for me. But it is a wonderful children's classic, and I highly recommend you at least watch the movie if you haven't already. Book number 3 is Circe by Madeline Miller. This book is a Greek mythology retelling of Circe, who plays a minor role in the Odyssey, which depicts her transforming from an outcast to a powerful witch. In this book, Circe is the daughter of the sun, and she is kind of an outcast for not having the same powers as the other immortals and her mother and father. Because she's an outcast, she seeks companionship with the mortals. She falls in love with a mortal, but he breaks her heart. So in revenge, she turns a rival into a monster, and for this she gets exiled to live on an island in seclusion because of her witchcraft. She begins to explore her identity and purpose alone on this island. She becomes the original queen of cozy hobbies, working on a loom, gardening, all the fun witchcrafty things. That was really fun to navigate, but obviously very slow moving. A lot of people complain about that with this book, so I'll warn you. The writing is so beautiful. It's very descriptive and flowery, and I think that's what makes it feel like it moves slowly, because we're just getting a full picture of what this island looks like around her and what things feel like. But it's just amazing writing. It did take me ages to get through this book, but it was worth every second. When ships make land on her shores, men see her as a vulnerable opportunity to take advantage of. So this book really explores fear and self-preservation as Circe struggles to find her place in a world where men just take whatever they want. And as with what happens in the Odyssey, she turns men into pigs in order to take back the power. It's a very character-driven story with really strong feminist themes. It even explores single motherhood and the challenges that come with that, which I really cherished. But I highly recommend this book if you haven't read it already. Book number 4 is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I want to start by saying I literally couldn't recommend you a bad book by this author. I've read all but one of her books, and literally every single one is just chef's kiss. In The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, she was a Hollywood icon, I want to say of the 50s, and she has never done a tell-all of her story. The other perspective we're following, a small reporter who is only getting started in her career, gets the opportunity from Evelyn Hugo to tell her story, and we don't know why she's chosen her. We don't know why now she's choosing to tell her story, but we are following along as she tells it. This book really explores the expectations placed on women when it comes to beauty, behavior, getting married, and all of the challenges we face in this patriarchal society. Evelyn really hones her sexual power as a way to gain agency over her own autonomy and control men in her life and also the media, and kind of controls the narrative towards her public image for her own benefit. I think this was such a intriguing book to read, especially as a Taylor Swift fan. I mean, think even today, even as a fan, we try to figure out who each song is about, and there is so much emphasis placed on her relationships rather than her and her feelings. Like this whole new album, The Tortured Poets Department, is about how depressed and how much she's struggling. I mean, she's struggling with alcoholism and suicidal ideation, but we're all like, okay, but who's that song about? And it's really devastating to experience and see happening right before us. It also talks about how the pursuit of fame can really cause you to compromise your integrity and be a people pleaser and compromise what you want for yourself, even if that's love and loving who you love in public. I don't think there is anyone who can write a better famous fictional character than Taylor Jenkins Reid. She did this as well in Daisy Jones and the Six, and when you are reading these books, you are going to inevitably Google these characters because you're going to think they must have been real people. Now that Daisy Jones and the Six has been made into an Amazon Prime TV show, it would be even trippier to read that for the first time now. I remember Googling them and trying to listen to the songs. I was like, this surely has to be a real band. And now I literally can listen to them on Spotify or on YouTube Music, whatever you listen to music on. And I think that makes it feel even more real. So highly recommend you pick up literally any book from this author. Book number 5 is Ignite Me by Tahera Mafi. I guess a common theme throughout this video is that I really love a third book in a series. This is the third book in the Shatter Me series, which is a dystopian romance. Our main character, Juliet, has the power of lethal touch, and she has been imprisoned and locked up, which apparently I also like because that was a thread in Heir of Fire as well. She has been locked up in order to protect others from her dangerous power. The writing style in this series is so unique. There are places where it's just walls of text where she's just losing her mind, and there's strikeouts a lot. I know some people find this annoying when they read this book for the first time because it's so like melodramatic and not like a correct writing style, but I love that this book breaks that kind of rule and makes it feel so like you're in the head of someone who's losing their mind. But in this dystopian world, the government, called the Reestablishment, wants to use Juliet as a weapon for their benefit. But by this third book, she has joined up with a resistance group, and there are changing relationships, and it feels like there's threads of fate that she was always meant to be where she is. There's themes of freedom and embracing your powers, and I really love to see that in books, as you can see from this list. I think this series can be a hit or miss for people, and I really only love the original trilogy. I have stopped reading the books that have come out since, but the original trilogy holds such a special place in my heart. And this third book especially, where the romance plotline completely changes. I find it really interesting that a villain gets completely redeemed to the point where we're rooting for him. When I was putting together this list of books, I noticed that there were a lot of themes of the kinds of books I really like, so I put them into sections. The first 5 books were all about powerful female protagonists, and the next 3 books are going to fall into the category that I call books that mess with time. Book number 6 is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. Addie LaRue makes a deal with a demon of sorts to live forever, but the catch is that she will always be immediately forgotten by everyone she meets, until 300 years later when she finally meets someone who remembers her. If I could read any book again for the first time, it would be this one. This book is an actual work of art. I immediately knew when reading it, it's going to be a classic someday. It has beautiful lyrical prose, and it's so atmospheric. It's such an original concept. Throughout the novel, Addie is struggling to maintain her sense of identity despite her curse. She really wants to have a sense of purpose, which is really difficult when you can't leave a mark on the world you live in or the people you meet. The exploration of memory and the desire to be seen is so powerful. It explores how human bonds can transcend time. I really liked the elements of feeling almost fated. Addie was such a complex character, and I really liked how Schwab jumped around in the timeline to give us compelling bits of the past also mixed in with the present. I really love everything V.E. Schwab writes. She is a master of the craft, and as I have been researching storytelling and writing myself, it has given me a whole new perspective and appreciation for her work. Book number 7 is The Unmaking of June Farrow by Adrienne Young. This is another author where I've read almost all of her books, and every single one is a 5-star. June Farrow lives in a small town where everyone believes her family is crazy, and she too is waiting for the cracks to start showing in her own mind, and in fact they have. She begins to unravel these threads and discover the dark secrets about her family's history, and we feel like we're going crazy with her, but we want to know what's really happening. She ends up stuck choosing between 2 lives, and that's all I'm gonna say because I need you to be as shook as I was reading this story. But it really explores the themes of generational curses, love, and sacrifice, and choosing a life for yourself. I really loved the chemistry and dynamics between the 2 love interests, that's all I'm gonna say. One who wants to protect her from herself, and one who doesn't want to let her back in only to hurt him again. The stakes and emotions in this book were just so real and palpable. I could not put this book down. Literally, I read it in 2 days. And I immediately wanted to reread it, which I think says something. Like when you have already dedicated your time to finishing a book and you know how the story ends, but you feel a desire to read it again, that says something. That's a really good book. So I highly recommend this, and I highly recommend you check out any and all of her books. Fable is another one that is so good if you love nautical themes like I do, which we're about to get to in the next section of books. You will really love Fable as well. The last book in this category of books that mess with time is Landline by Rainbow Rowell. Georgie's marriage is kind of falling apart, and she's really pouring herself into her work. And Christmas break is coming up, and she's decided to stay back and work while her family goes back home for Christmas. But she discovers she can communicate with her husband in the past through a landline phone in her house, giving her a chance to fix her marriage before it completely falls apart. This book really explores open and honest communication and the importance of it, as well as exploring identity in marriage and motherhood, which is really important with me as well. I loved this book the first time I read it, but I have reread it almost every Christmas since. But I've come to appreciate it even more since that first read because of getting married and becoming a mother. It just hits home for me even more now and has become such a nostalgic holiday read. Forgiveness is also a recurring theme in this book, as Georgie and Neil have to learn to forgive not only themselves, but each other for their past hurts that they have left untalked about. And I really love just any book that plays with time and forces characters to choose the next step in their life for themselves, or choose between two types of lives that they can see playing out right in front of them. Another recommendation I'd have that is similar to this one, that is also by Taylor Jenkins Reid, who I mentioned earlier, is Maybe in Another Life. She basically has to look at two paths forward for herself and choose which life she wants to live. I could honestly do a whole video about books that mess with time if I could find a better title for that category of books, because I have so many favorites in that list. The next category of books is pretty niche, but it is books with sirens. I really love siren lore and mythology. Any book that involves mermaids, sign me up. I have two comfort books that fall into this category. So if that's not your thing, feel free to comment down below what your favorite type of fantasy creature is so that I can give you some recommendations, and you can skip to the next chapter for more book recs. My comfort book number 9 is The Siren by Kiera Cass. The Siren is a young adult romance with just a dash of fantasy. This was the first time I'd ever discovered a book with mermaids in it, and Aquamarine was my favorite comfort movie as a kid. One weekend I was sick and it was already in the DVD player, and my mom had to work, so I literally just kept clicking replay on Aquamarine, and I watched it 13 times in one weekend. When I discovered there were a such thing as mermaid books, I was really eager to pick this up. The main character, Colin, is a siren who is serving a 100-year sentence to the ocean. She is basically the ocean's beautiful weapon, and her job is to use her voice to lure people to their watery graves. She is living a very lonely existence because she is not intended to engage or interact with mortals or humans in any way besides to sing her song. Her loyalty to the ocean is actually tested when she falls in love with a human. And I really love to see the personification of the ocean. That was so unique, and I really enjoyed that in this book. This book had a lot of elements that I would want in a siren book, but it felt very insta-lovey. I do feel like the characters could have been developed better, but it was still so pivotal in my reading journey and also my writing journey, because I remember reading this book and being so unsatisfied with the ending that I was like, I honestly want to write this book but with a different ending. I am taking inspiration from part of the premise of this book in a story I have been plotting on and off for years now. So hopefully I can share some writing content on here whenever I do move past the imposter syndrome with writing and get past the brainstorming and outlining phase. Book number 10 on this list is Into the Drowning Deep by Mira Grant. On the opposite end of this siren book spectrum, we have this science fiction horror story with killer mermaids. We are following a voyage to the Mariana Trench to discover what happened on a perilous expedition where the main character's sister did not return. I really like that this book took a scientific approach to mermaids, even though they are a mythological creature. This book is a journey of exploration, both physically and emotionally. The characters are on a journey to the depths of the ocean, not knowing what faces them or what lies beneath the surface, and they're uncovering secrets that really challenge their understanding of the world around them. These killer mermaids are violent. This book is so much more graphic and gory than the last recommendation, but it really gripped me. There is a haunting scene that I think about sometimes when I'm trying to go to sleep at night, and it feels like I saw it in a movie. That's how good their writing was. And it also had unexpected bisexual representation, which we love to see. This category of books is called Because I Love Magic. The first two is specifically because I love to see magicians in books. I always fall in love with a magician character, I can't help it. And then the third is because I love unique magic systems. So book number 11 on my list is Escaping from Houdini by Carrie Maniscalco. This is another third book in a series. Apparently third books in a series just hit differently for me. Stalking Jack the Ripper follows Audrey Rose and Thomas Cresswell as they kind of Sherlock Holmes some gruesome discoveries and try to get to the bottom of some murders that are happening. The chemistry between them is so real in every book, and the slow burn of their romance is just unmatched. But this is just a testament to how much I love a magician character, because the magician in this book is kind of an antagonist. He's getting in the way of Audrey Rose and Thomas's romance. He's interested in Audrey Rose. I'm not someone who usually loves a love triangle. Actually, that may be a lie, because I love Shatter Me, and the love triangle is like kind of a main plot line for like the whole second book, I think. But I love the tension it adds and the way it tests their relationship and their communication. Even though you know who's going to be endgame, I found the magician just so intriguing. They are aboard a luxury cruise liner, and it's just so atmospheric. They're attending his magician shows at night, and there's a murder aboard the ship, and we have to figure out who done it before everyone gets off board. Book number 12 is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. This book blends historical fiction and fantasy really well. It's about a magical circus that arrives without warning. Reading this book feels every bit as magical and legendary as attending the circus would. It's just so atmospheric. Behind the scenes of the circus are two young magicians named Celia and Marco, who have been trained since childhood. From the first page with Celia, I was so invested in her storyline. She is being trained by her father in the name of making her the best magician possible for this duel, but it's really only to make his legend as a magician be even more famous or infamous. And Marco is actually plucked from an orphanage to be trained for this duel, so they both have really sad backgrounds where you are rooting for both of them, but you also hate that they've been tied up in all of this for nothing. What the two young magicians do not know is that only one of them can survive this game, and the circus is just a stage for their battle. Celia and Marco have a deep magical love, and they both are willing to sacrifice themselves for the other. But on both sides, their mentor is trying to get them to win the duel. The writing is just so magical, and this book is such an experience. This is another one of those books where as you're reading it, you're like, I can't wait to reread this one day. Book number 13 is Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. This is the first book in a series by Brandon Sanderson. It was my first high fantasy Brandon Sanderson. I've also read one of his young adult fantasies, but his adult fantasy series are very highly regarded. This book takes place in a world where the bad guy won. An immortal emperor has complete power over the world. He's honestly like a religion. People see him as a god. The elite nobles believe in him, and they oppress the Ska, who are basically the descendants of people who chose to not believe in the emperor. So they basically live with nothing, whereas the nobles live in luxury. The main character, Vin, discovers her powers of allomancy, which is a magic system involving metals and consuming metals for powers, which is really unique. It's such an interesting system. It is difficult to understand at first, but there is like a guide to what metal does what in the back of the book if you're getting confused like I was. But she joins a group of rebels who are trying to overthrow the empire while we follow along as she explores her new powers. This book does really well with exploring themes of power and the sacrifice it takes to be a hero. I really loved the found family tropes in this and the topic of blind faith. The plot pacing and magic system were so compelling. I have yet to finish this series because I needed to let the first book simmer, and I just feel not ready to move forward with it after the plot twist at the end. If you know, you know. But those were the 13 comfort books that I will be rereading until the end of time. Some of my favorite elements in these comfort books seem to be powerful female protagonists, sirens and mermaids, magic, magicians, witches, books that play with time, breaking generational curses, and slow burn or faded romances. From that list, let me know if you have any recommendations for me, or just let me know what your favorite comfort read is, or if we had any in common. Thank you so much for getting cozy and unraveling my comfort books with me, and I hope you got some good book recommendations out of this video. For even more cozy content or book reviews, I'd love for you to be my friend on Instagram or Goodreads, and the link will be in the description down below. If you enjoyed this cozy video, make sure you tap subscribe so you don't miss future ones in your feed, and you can watch this one next. And I hope you have a very cozy week.